One of the biggest problems in the world today is that right from a person's childhood, an inflexible system of morality has been imposed on the mind. Whatever you consider good, you naturally get identified with it. Whatever you consider bad, you are naturally repelled by it. This attraction and aversion is the basis of all strong identification. The nature of your mind is that whatever you are averse to dominates it. Moralists and preachers have for generations told humanity to eschew evil thoughts. That is a surefire strategy to achieve the reverse. Now if you resist that supposedly evil thought, it becomes a full-time job. There is nothing else going on in your head. The idea of moral superiority has been the source of too many inhuman acts to be ignored. Most people who believe they are virtuous are hard to live with. Besides, they spend most of their lives trying to avoid what they consider wrong or sinful. That usually means they are constantly thinking about it. Avoiding something is not freedom from it. Such morality is based on exclusion. Spirituality, on the other hand, is born of inclusion. The essential nature of our humanity has been so suppressed and distorted that the substitute of morality has been brought in to bring some order and sanity to our lives. This has happened because we have not done anything to keep our humanity active. If your humanity were active, there would be no need for morality at all. Morality always differs from person to person, according to time, place, situation and convenience. But wherever humanity has found its expression, at any time in history or in any culture in the world, it has always been the same and will always be. On a superficial level, in terms of our values, morals and ethics, each one of us may be different, but if you know how to pierce a person deep enough to touch his humanity, each one of us is the same. To impose morality, you don't need any involvement with people. You just have to dole out the diktats. Be good, speak kindly. If you speak in anger, the consequences will be dire, and so forth. But if you want to kindle humanity in a person, it takes much more involvement. It means giving yourself. Morality is worthwhile because it helps ensure social order, but it is capable of wreaking inner havoc. Since nobody can live by morals prescribed by most religions, most of humanity lives in a state of perpetual guilt, shame and fear. This is a tragically crippled existence. Humanity will also bring social order, but it requires no external enforcement whatsoever. Make a list of all the things that the major religions of the world call a sin, and you will find just to be alive is a sin. If you are born, it is a sin. If you menstruate, it is a sin. If you copulate, it's a sin. Forget all this. Even if you so much as eat a chocolate, you could commit a sin. Since the very process of life is a sin, you live in a perpetual guilt and terror. If people were not so racked by fear and guilt, the temples, mosques and churches in the world would not be as congested as they are now. If you were naturally joyful, you would go and sit on the beach or listen to the whisper of the leaves on the trees. Only because religions have instilled such a sense of fear and shame are you ashamed of your very biology. Now you have to go to some place that is considered holy to wash it off. People always find ways to subvert values, morals and ethics. But when you are naturally joyful, you are naturally pleasant with the world around you. Spirituality does not mean moving away from life, it means becoming alive to the core, in the fullest possible way. With age, physical agility may diminish, but the level of joy and aliveness need not. If your level of joy and aliveness is declining, you are committing suicide in installments. For example, I don't think with my head, but with every cell in my body. This makes my thinking an organic, seamless and integrated process. There is a certain level of integratedness about it because it involves all of me. I don't have much thought in my mind at all unless I choose to think. Nothing has ever been out of place in this existence. Things have only been out of place in human societies. Between this piece of life and that piece of life, there can be a comparison. But for the intelligence that is making all life happen, there is no context, no comparison, because there is no other. You cannot say whether it is now in place or not. It is always in place. There is no other way for it to be. And the pursuit of yoga is just this, moving from this small head full of information to a cosmos of intelligence. What a tragic choice people so often end up making, choosing the finiteness of the human brain over a universe of infinite knowing. Sadhana. Just work at removing from the mind the idea that thought is intelligence. The whole process of creation, from a single atom to the cosmos, is a fantastic expression of intelligence. Right now, within your own body, there is a throbbing intelligence that is the very source of creation. With the overrated intellect that you own, can you even understand the activity of a single cell in your body in its entirety? The first step towards moving from the trap of intellect to the lap of a larger intelligence is to recognize that every aspect of life, from a grain of sand to a mountain, a drop to an ocean, from the atomic to the cosmic, is a manifestation of a far greater intelligence than your minuscule intellect. If you take this one step, life will start speaking to you like never before. Believing versus seeking. Once it happened. On a certain day, two Irishmen were working on the street in front of a London brothel. They saw a Protestant minister coming their way. He rolled up his collar, put his head down and quietly slipped into the brothel. Two men looked at each other and shrugged. See, what else can you expect from a Protestant? They continued to work. After some time, a rabbi came by. He had a muffler around his throat, almost covering his face. He ducked into the brothel too. The men were deeply pained and shook their heads sadly. What has happened? Times have gone bad. A religious man in a brothel. Why is this happening? After a while, the local bishop came along. He looked this way and that, tightened his cloak around himself, slipped into the brothel. One of the men turned to the other and said, "One of the girls must be really sick." The moment you get strongly identified, you lose your perspective on life. The ideas of good and bad, right and wrong are all your mental constructs. They have nothing to do with life as such. What was considered to be moral 100 years ago is intolerable today. What you think is very good, your children despise. Your ideas of good and bad are just a certain level of prejudice against life. The moment you get identified with your limited ideas of morality, you become completely twisted. Your intellect functions around these identifications in such a way that you never see the world as it is. If you want an element of spirituality to enter your life, the first thing you must do is drop these rigid ideas of virtue and vice and learn to look at life just the way it is. But when uttering the mantra, just don't think of monkeys. The man was incredulous at the simplicity of the practice. Is that all? He asked joyfully. May I leave now? The Guru said, by all means, please go and return in 40 days. The man left in a state of great excitement. The fool of a Guru revealed all his secrets to me without even charging a fee. And he is telling me not to think of monkeys. Why would I think of monkeys? Ridiculous. He came down the mountainside and reached the banks of river Ganga. He took a dip in the holy river, sat down to begin his practice. But no sooner he uttered the word asatoma and monkeys. Each time a monkey popped into his head, he took another dip in the river. He attempted the mantra in various yogic postures, but each time he uttered the very first syllable, monkeys would appear. In 1 week of intense practice, there was no need for a mantra anymore. It was a universe full of monkeys, a simian nightmare. Harassed by these countless monkeys, unable to do a thing, the man went all the way back to the Guru and said, I don't want your damn supernatural powers. Relieve me of these monkeys first. If you tell yourself you don't want to think of a certain thought, that is precisely the first thing your mind will produce. That is the nature of the mind. In recent times, much scientific research has been conducted on the activity of the brain. If you look at the way neurons fire in the brain, there is a tremendous cohesiveness in this activity. It is this cohesiveness that translates into efficient functioning of the body. A billion sophisticated activities are being performed in your body right now because of the highly coordinated and complex dance of neurons. But the mind, in most people's experience, has unfortunately become a circus. A circus is actually a very coordinated activity deliberately made to look like a mess. Even the clown in the circus is a gymnast. He may play the buffoon, but he is hugely talented and skillful in what he is doing. The metaphor of the clown sums up the experience of most people when it comes to their mental activity. How did the mind, that amazing gymnast, become a clown? How did it turn from a source of magic to such a mess? Why has this miraculous instrument become such a misery manufacturing machine? As noted earlier, every human being is essentially seeking pleasantness within and without. When it comes to the outside, there are a million ingredients and nobody has complete mastery over them. When it comes to the inner situation, however, there is only one ingredient, you. You can be the sole architect and creator of your inner life, but you don't know how. That is the rub. If you were in charge, for sure you would not manufacture misery for yourself. A fundamental freedom you have is to think whatever you want. What then stops you from thinking pleasant thoughts? The problem is just this: the fact that your mind is not taking instructions from you. Imagine a Paleolithic caveman punching a computer keyboard. What's going to come up on the screen will look like a series of obscenities. The system of yoga is a technology to create a distinction between you and your mind. There is a space between you and what you have gathered in terms of body and mind. Becoming conscious of this space is your first and only step to freedom. It is the accumulated psychological and physiological content that causes the cyclical pattern in your life and even beyond. If you can be constantly conscious of this space between you and the body-mind, you have opened up a dimension of limitless possibility. There are only two forms of suffering in this world, physical and mental. Once this distance becomes a constant factor in your experience, you have reached the end of suffering. With the elimination of the fear of suffering, you can walk life full stride, unafraid to explore all that life has to offer. Your ability to use this immensely sophisticated body-mind phenomena can be raised to a completely new dimension of experience and utility as you stand outside of them. This sounds paradoxical, but it is true. In the past, waking me up every morning was a family project. My family would try to make me sit up in bed, I would keel over and fall asleep again. My mother would hand me my toothbrush, I would stick it in my mouth and fall asleep. In desperation, she would push me into the bathroom, I would promptly fall asleep again. But 3 months after starting yoga, my body started coming awake at 3:40 every morning, without any external prompting, as it does even today. After I woke, my practices would simply happen no matter where I was and in what situation, without a single day's break. This simple yoga, called Angamardana, a system of yoga that strengthens sinews and limbs, definitely set me apart in any group of people physically and mentally. But that's about all among the leading private contractors in Mysore. My father was incredulous and delighted. I was exuberant and sure-footed, adrenaline-charged and itching for a challenge. When everything you do is a success, you tend to start believing that the planets revolve around you, not the sun. And that was the kind of young man I was that fateful afternoon of September 1982, when I decided to get on my check motorcycle and ride up Chamundi Hill. I had no clue then that my life would never be the same again. Later, when I tried to talk to my friends about what had happened that day upon the mountain, all they could ask was, "Did you drink something? Did you pop something?" They were even more clueless than I was of this new dimension that had suddenly exploded into my life. Even before I had begun to process what it meant, the experience returned. It was a week later. I was sitting at the dining table with my family. I thought it lasted 2 minutes, but it was 7 hours. I was sitting right there, fully aware, except that the me I knew as myself was not there anymore. Everything else was, and the time flipped. I remember various members of my family tapping me on the shoulder, asking me what happened, urging me to eat my meal. I simply raised my hand and asked them to leave. They were accustomed to my strange ways by then. They left me alone. It was almost 4:15 in the morning when I returned to my normal senses. The experience began to happen more frequently. When it occurred, I neither ate nor slept for hours on end. I simply sat rooted to a single spot. On one occasion, the experience lasted for up to 13 days. I happened to be in a village when it began. This state of overwhelming and indescribable stillness and ecstasy. The villagers gathered around me and started whispering to each other, "Oh, he must be in samadhi," a blissful state of being beyond the body, well documented in the Indian spiritual traditions. India, being the country it is, there was a traditional understanding of spirituality to which they were a hair that I, with my blue denim-wrapped brain, had no clue about. When I emerged from that state, someone wanted to put a garland around me, another wanted to touch my feet. It was crazy. I could not believe anyone would want to do this to me. On another day, I was having lunch. I put a morsel of food in my mouth and suddenly it exploded. At that moment, I was able to experience the miraculous alchemy of human digestion, the process by which an external substance, a piece of the planet, was becoming a part of me. We all know this intellectually, that a part of the planet nourishes us, and our bodies, in turn, one day return to nourish the very same earth that once sustained us. But when the knowledge dawned experientially, it altered my fundamental perspective of who I was. My relationship with everything around me, including the planet, went through a dimensional shift. I grew aware of that extraordinary intelligence within each of us that is capable of transforming a piece of bread or an apple into the human body in a single afternoon. Not a small feat. As I began consciously touching that intelligence, which is the source of creation, seemingly inexplicable events started occurring around me. Things that I touched were transformed in some way or the other. People would look at me and burst into tears. Many claimed that they were relieved of conditions of physical and mental suffering just by looking at me. I found myself healed in a matter of hours of conditions that I would have taken months to get out of through normal medical care. However, I gave all of this little importance. This ability to transform my external and internal reality quite dramatically has continued within me and around me to this very day. It is not something I have ever tried consciously to achieve. It is just that once one is in touch with this deeper dimension of intelligence, which is the very basis of existence here, life turns quite naturally miraculous. In about 6 to 8 weeks, this incredible experience became a living reality. During this time, everything about me changed dramatically. My physical appearance, the shape of my eyes, my gait, my voice, the very alignment of my body began changing so drastically that people around me started to notice as well. Ultimately, the rising of the Kundalini energy sets the basis for a much larger perception of life. Traditional images of Adi Yogi or Shiva depict a snake with him to indicate that his perception is at its peak. Only if energy rises to a certain level of intensity and volume can reality be perceived in its utmost purity. Otherwise, every karmic imprint that we have, which goes right back to the single-celled creature that we once were, will interfere with the way we perceive reality. Joy, the beginning. Joy is a rare visitor in most people's lives. The intention of this book has been to make it your lifelong companion. Joy is not some elusive spiritual goal. It is simply the background milieu that is needed for any aspect of your life to unfold magically and wonderfully. If joy is not the ambience of your life, even life's most pleasurable activities become burdensome. The issues of life around you can be addressed to the best of your capabilities. But once joy is your constant companion, you are no more an issue in your life. After that, life is a journey of endlessly unfolding celebration and discovery. For the first time in the history of humanity, we have the necessary resources, capability and technology to address every issue on the planet, of nourishment, health, education, you name it. We have tremendous tools of science and technology at our disposal, powerful enough to make or break the world several times over. However, if the ability to wield such powerful instruments is not accompanied by a deep sense of compassion, inclusiveness balance and maturity, we could be on the brink of a global disaster. Our relentless pursuit of external well-being is already on the verge of annihilating the planet. Never before has a generation of people known the comforts and conveniences we have today. And yet, we cannot claim to be the most joyful or loving generation in history. A vast number of people live in states of constant anxiety and depression. Some are suffering their failure, but ironically, many are suffering the consequences of their success. Some are suffering their limitations, but many are suffering their freedom. What is missing is human consciousness. Everything else is in place, but the human being is not in place. If human beings stopped obstructing the path to their own happiness, every other solution is at hand. You cannot transform the world without transforming the individual. My life's work has been dedicated to empowering the human beings to take charge of their own destinies and bringing them to a state of joyful inclusiveness so that the possibility that we are does not pass us by as a generation. Your joy, your misery, your love, your agony, your bliss lie in your hands. There is a way out, and the way out is in. It is only by turning inward that we can truly create a world of love, light, and laughter. This book could be a doorway to that world. Let us make it happen.
Thanks for watching this video. Please share your valuable feedback in comment box.
Matsyendranath saw that he was running a little ahead of himself, so he told him, "Go away for 14 years. Don't stay near me. You are imbibing too much from me." This was the hardest thing for Gorakhnath to do. If Matsyendranath had said, "Give up your life," he would have done it at once. Go away was something he could not bear, but since that was what his beloved master demanded of him, he went away. For 14 years, he counted the days and hours, waiting for the moment when he could return. The moment the period was over, he came rushing back. When he came, he found a disciple guarding the cave where Matsyendranath lived. Gorakhnath said, "I want to see my master." The yogi who was guarding the cave said, "I have no such instructions, so you had better wait." Gorakhnath flared up. He said, "I have waited for 14 years, you fool. I don't know when you came here. Maybe you came here the day before yesterday. How dare you stop me?" He pushed him aside and went into the cave. Matsyendranath was not there. Gorakhnath came back and shook the disciple and said, "Where is he? I want to see my master now." The disciple said, "I have no instructions to tell you where he is." Gorakhnath could not contain himself. He used his occult powers, looked into the disciple's mind, and identified where Matsyendranath was. He then started heading in that direction. His guru was waiting for him halfway. Matsyendranath said, "I sent you away for 14 years because you are beginning to become occult-oriented. You are losing sight of the spiritual process and beginning to enjoy the power that it gave you. When you come back, the first thing that you do is use your occult to open up your brother disciple's mind. Another 14 years for you." And so he sent him away again. There are many stories about Gorakhnath making forays into this forbidden realm and Matsyendranath punishing him again and again. At the same time, Gorakhnath evolved finally into the greatest disciple that Matsyendranath ever produced. This is how the practice of occult has always been treated in the yogic culture. It was never treated with respect. It was seen as a way of misusing life, of encroaching into areas where you should not. It was practiced only by certain types of people obsessed with power or money. At the same time, occult is not always a negative thing. It has earned this reputation through misuse. Occult is essentially a technology. No science or technology is intrinsically negative. If we start using technology to kill or torture people, then after some time we think enough of this damn technology. That is what has happened to occult. Too many people misused it for personal benefit, so generally on the spiritual path, occult is shunned. What is often referred to as occult is broadly what we know as Tantra. In the current understanding in society, Tantra is about using very unorthodox or socially unacceptable methods. But in its classical sense, Tantra simply means technology. It has nothing to do with unbridled sexuality. It is important to make a clear distinction between the occult kind of Tantra and the spiritual Tantra. These two were divided as left-hand Tantra and right-hand Tantra, and are completely different in nature. Left-hand Tantra involves various rituals which may seem weirder than weird to many. The left-hand Tantra is very external. You need materials and elaborate arrangements to make it happen. Occult practices, generally referred to as left-hand Tantra, gave people powers to communicate across distances, to appear in two different places at the same time, and use energies to their own benefit and to the detriment of others. Right-hand Tantra is more internal. It is about enabling you to use your energies to make things happen. You use all the simple aspects of life as a subjective science to turn inward and do something with yourself. The left-hand Tantra is a rudimentary technology and more available to the uninitiated, while the right-hand Tantra is highly refined and only available through powerful initiations. Tantra is a certain capability. Without it, there is no spiritual process. If you have no Tantra in you, you have no technology to transform people. All you have are words. Words can be inspirational and directional, but not transformative. A scholar cannot be labeled a guru. Without a technology for transformation, there is no master. So there is no guru without Tantra. Today there are too many people claiming to be gurus, but all they are doing is rehashing the scriptures. A true guru's work is to overhaul the entire human mechanism from acquired cyclical patterns of karma towards its ultimate possibility. It is like a mechanic's job, removing karmic warts. If there is no Tantra or technology in him, you cannot call that person a guru. Serpent power. The word Kundalini literally means energy. It refers to a certain type of energy within every human being, which is largely latent and unmanifest. The Kundalini has always been symbolized in the yogic tradition as a coiled cobra. A coiled cobra knows stillness of a very high quality. When the snake is motionless, it is so absolutely still that even if it is lying in your way, you will miss it. Only when it moves do you see it, but these coils hold a hidden volatile dynamism within themselves. So Kundalini is referred to as a coiled cobra because this tremendous energy exists within each and every human being, but until it moves, you never realize it is there. To live a full-fledged physical life, a minuscule amount of this physical energy is adequate. Only when the need to transcend physicality happens do you need a burst of energy which will launch you beyond this reality. It is like the difference in the quantum of energy required in air travel and in a rocket launch. Flying within the atmosphere is one thing, and breaking the atmospheric barrier for space travel is quite another. Similarly, transcending physicality requires another dimension of energy altogether. There is not a single Indian temple where there is no image of snake. This is not because this is a culture of serpent worshippers. It signifies that a sacred space holds the possibility of arousing the unmanifest energies in you. Snakes are known to be highly perceptive creatures. Part of the reason for this, of course, is that they are stone deaf and perceive only reverberation. The snake is particularly drawn to a person who is meditative. In the tradition, it is always said that if the yogi is meditating in a place, there will be a snake somewhere nearby. If your energies become still, the cobra is naturally drawn to you. Though physically there is a world of a difference between a snake and a human being, it is very close in terms of its energy system. If you encounter a cobra in the wild, you might find it coming into your hands without any resistance because its energies and yours are so akin to each other. Unless your chemistry shows alarm, which it interprets as danger, the snake has no intention of giving up its venom, which is its wealth, the medicinal properties of which are being increasingly acknowledged in the world today. Historically, of course, the snake has received much bad press because of the biblical story of Adam and Eve. But if you examine the tale closely, you will see it is the snake that initiated life on this planet. Otherwise, there was just a dumb couple who didn't know what to do with themselves, and you and I wouldn't have been here without that wonderful serpent. Irrespective of what you think you are, when death confronts you, every identification falls away. If human beings learn to drop these voluntarily, life would be blissful. If you do not encumber your intellect with any identifications, body, gender, family, qualifications, society, race, caste, creed, community, nation, even species, you travel naturally towards your ultimate nature. If not, death will demolish it all anyway. You need have no doubt about that. If you employ your intelligence and make an attempt to reach your ultimate nature, this is called Gnana Yoga, or the yoga of knowing. Gnana yogis cannot afford to identify themselves with anything. If they do, that is the end of their journey. But unfortunately, what has happened to Gnana Yoga, at least in India, is that its proponents entertain several beliefs. I am the universal soul, the absolute, the supreme being. They know it all from the arrangement of the cosmos to the shape and size of the soul. They have read all these things in a book. This is not Gnana Yoga. Any information you have about that which is not a living experience for you is irrelevance. Maybe it is very holy irrelevance, but it does not liberate you, it only entangles you. On a certain day, a bull was grazing on a field. He went deep into the forest and after weeks of grazing on lush grass, became nice and fat. A lion who was past his prime and having difficulty hunting his prey saw this nice fat bull, pounced on him, killed him and ate him up. His stomach became full. Then with great satisfaction he roared. A few hunters were passing by. They heard the roar and tracked him down and shot him dead. The moral of the story: When you are so full of bull, you should not open your mouth. Very few people have the necessary intellect to pursue Gnana Yoga 100%. Most need a huge amount of preparation. There is an entire yogic process to make your intellect so razor-sharp that it does not stick to anything, but it is very time-consuming because the mind is a tricky customer. It is capable of creating a million illusions. Gnana Yoga, as a part of your spiritual pursuit, is a workable proposition. As an exclusive path, it is only for a very rare few. Sadhana. Just sit alone for an hour. No reading, no television, no phone, no communication, nothing. Just see, in the course of this hour, what thoughts dominate your mind, whether it's food, sex, your car, your furniture, your jewelry, or anything else. If you find yourself thinking recurrently about people or things, your identification is essentially with your body. If your thoughts are about what you would like to do in the world, your identification is essentially with your mind. Everything else is a complex set of offshoots of these two aspects. This is not a value judgment. It is just a way of knowing what stage of life you are at. How quickly you want to evolve depends on your own choices. Soak the intellect in awareness. In the yogic system of classification, the mind has 16 dimensions. These 16 fall into 4 categories. There is the discerning or discriminatory dimension of the mind, or the intellect, the buddhi, the accumulative dimension of the mind or memory, manas, which gathers information, and what is called awareness, chitta, which is beyond both intellect and memory. The 4th dimension, ahankara, we discussed earlier, the aspect of the mind from which you derive your sense of identity. The 1st dimension, the intellect or the buddhi, is crucial for your survival. You are able to discern a person from a tree only because your intellect is functional. You know that you must walk through the door, not through the wall, only because your intellect is functional. Without this dimension of discernment, you would not know how to survive on this planet. On more complex and sophisticated levels, intellect has contributed immeasurably to human culture and civilization. The problem of our times, however, is that the intellect has taken on a disproportionately important role. Modern education has encouraged a completely lopsided development of this aspect of the mind. The essence of the intellect is to divide. So humanity has embarked on a journey of wholesale division, discrimination and dissection. We have split everything. Even the invisible atom has been split. Once you unleash the intellect, it splits everything it encounters. It does not allow you to be with anything totally. Although it is a wonderful instrument for survival, it is also at the same time a terrible barrier that stands between you and your experience of the oneness of life. How do we address this problem? Yoga offers us a way. In our times, it is not just a useful strategy, it is perhaps our only chance of reversing a journey that seems to be taking us headlong towards self-destruction. The intellect is becoming a barrier because you keep it constantly dipped in the accumulative part of the mind, your memory, manas. Examine this for yourself. you will find that every thought that arises in the mind has its roots in data you have already accumulated. The data may be gathered consciously or unconsciously. In any case, this basically means your intellect is perpetually immersed in the past. In such a state, nothing new is now possible, and so the intellect loses its edge and becomes a trap. The accumulative part of the mind is, to put it simply, just society's garbage bin. It is merely a heap of impressions you have gathered from outside. Anybody you encounter stuffs something into your head and moves on. Your parents, teachers, friends, enemies, preachers, the news anchors on the TV, just about everyone. You have no choice about who to receive from and who not to receive from. The moment you say, "I don't like this person," you often end up receiving much more from him or her than anybody else. You have the ability to process the information you receive, but that is all. Your ability to merely recycle the garbage you have picked up is what the mighty intellect has been reduced to. The blitzkrieg of information that your mind receives daily enters you only through your 5 sense organs. Your sense organs, as we have seen before, always perceive everything only in comparison. Where there is comparison, there is always duality. Suppose I were to show you my hand. While you are able to see one side, you cannot see the other. If I were to show you the other side, you won't be able to perceive this first side. Human perception through the sense organs is always piecemeal. It can give you an illusion of completeness, but can never comprehend the whole. When you keep your intellect dipped in this limited, fragmented, accumulative dimension of your mind, you draw conclusions about life that are completely distorted. The more people become engrossed in thought, the more joyless they become. Love mantra. And what about love? Is there such a thing as unconditional love? Can it truly exist between two human beings? These are frequently asked questions. One day, Shankaran Pillai went to a park. He saw an attractive woman seated on a stone bench. He settled down on the same bench. After a few minutes, he moved a little closer. She moved away. He waited for a few minutes, then moved a little closer. She moved away. When he did this again, she moved to the very end of the bench. He went very close and put his arm around her. She shoves him away. Then he went down on his knees, plucked a flower, handed it to her, and said, "I love you, like I have never loved anybody in my life." The sun was setting. He looked at her with a melting gaze. Above all, the ambience was right. She thought. Nature took over. They had their way with each other. The dusk deepened into night. Shankaran Pillai suddenly sprang to his feet and said, "It's 8 o'clock, I need to go." She said, "You just said you love me more than anyone else." "Yes, of course, but my wife is waiting." Generally, we have made relationships within frameworks that are comfortable and profitable for us. People have physical, psychological, emotional, financial and social needs to fulfill. To fulfill these needs, one of the best ways is to tell someone, "I love you." This so-called love has become something of an open sesame mantra. You can get what you want by saying it. Love is a quality, not something that you do with somebody else. Every action that we do is in some way to fulfill certain needs. If you see this, then there is a possibility that you can grow into love as your natural quality. But you can go on fooling yourself into believing that relationships that you have made for convenience, comfort and well-being are actually relationships of love. I am not saying There is no experience of love at all in these associations, but it is within certain limitations. It does not matter how many times true love has been proclaimed. If few expectations and requirements are not fulfilled, things fall apart. This is essentially a mutual benefit scheme. There is really no such thing as conditional love and unconditional love. There are conditions and there is love. When you talk about love, it has to be unconditional. The moment there is a condition, it just amounts to a transaction. Maybe a convenient transaction, maybe a good arrangement, but that will not fulfill you or transport you to another dimension. It is just convenient. Love need not necessarily be convenient. Most of the time it is not. It takes life. You have to invest yourself. If you have to be in love, you should not be. The English expression, falling in love, is very significant. You don't climb in love, you don't stand in love, you don't fly in love, you fall in love. Something of you should fall or melt away to accommodate the other. There is a distinction between a transaction and a love affair. A love affair need not be with any particular person. You could be having a great love affair with life itself. What you do and do not do is in accordance with the circumstances you are in. Our actions are always molded by the demands of external situations, but love is an inner state, and how you are within yourself can definitely be unconditional. Acts of love can become tedious and stressful over a period of time. You realize love is not something that you do, love is the way you are. Sadhana. Love is never between two people. It is what happens within you, and your interiority need not be enslaved to someone or something else. Where is the rain? He said, "No, Swami, it will rain." And it did. I sat up for days and nights after this. Why couldn't I feel what this man could feel? I sat holding my hand in different positions, trying to feel the moisture, the temperature, and trying to read the sky. I read all kinds of books on meteorology, but it felt like I was up against a wall. But then with careful observation of my own body and what was around me, I discovered the most fundamental mistake that most of us make. The fact that we view the ingredients which constitute our body, like earth, water, air and food, as commodities, not as an organic part of the life process. After persevering for about 18 months, I understood, and now if I say it's going to rain, 95% of the time it will. This is not astrology or magic, but a surmise based on the minute observation of a completely different level of the human system and its ongoing transaction with the planet and the atmosphere around. If it is to rain today, some change will happen in your body. Most urban dwellers cannot feel it, but many rural people all over the world do sense this. Most insects, birds, animals can feel it. A tree for sure knows it. Recognizing these small changes in the planetary system, the ancients tried to make use of them not just for their own well-being, but for transcendence. The magnetic equator of the planet flows through India. A few thousand years ago, yogis pinpointed the exact location of the magnetic equator and built a whole string of temples along this area for very specific reasons. One of the most famous temples is the South Indian temple of Chidambaram, which was set up for those who sought ultimate spiritual union. At the time of its construction, it was located exactly on the magnetic equator, which has since shifted. Many spiritual seekers gathered in Chidambaram over the centuries at those times when the planet was in a certain position. In this temple, a shrine was consecrated by Patanjali, the father of modern yoga, to Shunya, which literally means to emptiness or no thing. This is not mere symbolism. At the magnetic equator, there is no pull towards north or south. There is 0 degree of magnetic play. This promotes a certain balance and equanimity in the life of the spiritual seeker. This equanimity can be a powerful device to liberate oneself quite literally from the limitations of the physical world, which makes this region the ideal geographic location for a seeker. It is important to remember that the magnetic equator is distinct from the geographic equator. The additional significance of Chidambaram is that it happens to be located on 11 degrees latitude. When it was built, there was a convergence of magnetic equator with this latitude, a rare important occurrence. What was the significance of this location? The tilt of the planet at this latitude impels centrifugal forces in a nearly vertical direction, which, in turn, pushes energy upward through the human physiological system. This means that the ascent of human energy, the aim of the spiritual journey, is actually assisted by nature. Since this was a great source of encouragement to seekers, this entire region was considered to be sacred. It is not a coincidence that Isha Yoga Center in South India is located bang on 11 degrees latitude. The kind of spiritual system described above makes use of natural phenomena to support human efforts at spiritual growth. Another system of meditativeness or inwardness completely ignores the changes happening in creation and focuses solely on the inner journey. These are the two fundamental ways in which the spiritual journey can be approached. You can either go slowly, step by step, accepting all natural assistance available to you, or you can ignore all the steps and take the inward leap. The second entails a withdrawal from external life situations. The first makes involvement mandatory. Every human being is free to choose the path more suitable for his or her temperament. In the times in which we live, a balance between the two is usually best. Just when there was no more time left, they managed to set up the toilet tent. Akbar went in and moaned with relief. Then Birbal, who was waiting for him outside the tent, asked, "Do you agree with me now?" Akbar said, "It is the greatest pleasure." Relief from something that you cannot hold within you is always the greatest pleasure, isn't it? Whatever that thing may be. So the body can become an issue, a big issue, a barrier between you and your enjoyment of life. If you want to maintain the body in a certain way, it is important to pay attention to the various activities of the body in relation to food, sleep and sex. We will look at each of these in turn in the next few pages. Sadhana. It is important not to keep eating through the day. If you are below 30 years of age, 3 meals every day will fit well into your life. If you are over 30 years of age, it is best to reduce it to 2 meals per day. Our body and brain work at their best only when the stomach bag is empty. So be conscious of eating in such a way that within 2.5 hours your food moves out of the stomach and within 12 to 18 hours completely out of the system. With this simple awareness, you will experience much more energy, agility and alertness. These are the ingredients of a successful life. irrespective of what you choose to do with it. Food as fuel. Your physical body is just an accumulation of food. Yoga pays much attention to food because what kind of food you put into the system has a tremendous impact on the kind of body you have constructed. There is a whole yogic science behind what to eat, how to eat, and when to eat. What kind of stuff you put into it determines the quality of the body and how comfortable it is with itself. Are you preparing this body to run as swiftly as a cheetah? Or are you preparing this body to carry 200 pounds? Or are you preparing this body so that it becomes conducive for higher meditative possibilities? You need to eat the right kind of food depending on your inclination and what you want out of your life. The way you eat not only decides your physical health, but the very way you think, feel and experience life. Trying to eat intelligently means understanding what kind of fuel this body is designed for and accordingly supplying it, so that it functions at its best. Let us say you bought a gasoline car but pumped diesel into it. It might still move around, but it would not function at its optimal capacity, and its lifespan would also be substantially reduced. Similarly, if we do not understand what kind of fuel this body is designed for, if we just force whatever comes onto our plate into our systems, it will definitely not function at its optimum capacity, and its longevity could be seriously compromised. The compatibility of the fuel and the machine is of great importance if you are seeking a certain caliber of service. What kind of food is the human system really designed for? If you eat certain foods, the body becomes happy. If you eat certain other foods, the body turns dull and lethargic, and your sleep quota increases. If you sleep for 8 hours a day and you live 100 years, you have spent 1/3 of your life sleeping. Another 30 or 40% is spent on food, toilet and other ablutions. There is very little time left for life. You eat food for energy, but if you eat a big meal, do you feel energetic or lethargic? Depending upon the quality of the food that you eat, you first feel lethargy and then slowly you start feeling energetic. Why is this so? Next, if you look at the length of the alimentary canal for the herbivores, it is generally about 5 to 6 times the length of their body. In carnivores, it ranges 2 to 3 times the length of their bodies. To put it simply, carnivores have distinctly shorter alimentary canals than herbivores. This difference clearly indicates what type of food each species is supposed to consume. If you eat raw meat, it takes between 70 to 72 hours to pass through your system. Cooked meat takes 50 to 52 hours. Cooked vegetables 24 to 30 hours. Uncooked vegetables 12 to 15 hours. Fruits 1.5 to 3 hours. If you keep raw meat outside for 70 to 72 hours, putrefaction sets in. One small piece of meat can evict you from your home. Putrefaction occurs very rapidly in summertime when the temperature and moisture are conducive. Your stomach is always a tropical place. If meat stays there for up to 72 hours, the level of putrefaction is very high. This essentially means there is excessive bacterial activity and your body must expend a lot of energy to contain the bacterial level, so that it does not cross the line that separates health from ill health. If you visit a friend who is sick in the hospital, you would surely not take him a pizza or a steak. You are most likely to take him fruit. If you happen to be in the wild, what would be the first thing you would eat? Definitely fruit. You remember, even Adam ate an apple, although we know what trouble that got him into. Then would come roots, the killing of an animal, and raising crops. Fruit is the most easily digestible food, and all human beings know this instinctively. Most carnivorous animals do not eat every day, definitely not 3 times a day. They know the food they eat moves very slowly through their tracts. A tiger is said to eat once every 6 to 8 days. He is agile and prowls when he is hungry, eats a hefty meal of 50 pounds of meat at once, and then generally sleeps or ambles around lazily. A cobra eats 60% of its own body weight in a single meal and eats only once every 12 to 15 days. The pygmies from the Central African region used to hunt elephants, eat their organs and meat raw and drink the blood fresh, and they say they would sleep after this kind of meal for over 40 hours at a stretch. But as lifestyles change and grow more urban and sedentary, it is clear that human beings cannot maintain such a mode of life. You certainly cannot afford this sort of lifestyle. You have to eat every day and rest at specific times because your alimentary canal is similar to that of the herbivores. The protein debate. There is much emphasis laid nowadays on eating protein. It is important to understand that only 3% of our body is composed of protein, and excess protein consumption can cause cancer. Meat runs high in protein. Very small portion of the meat that one consumes can fulfill human protein requirement. The remaining protein, which travels very slowly through the alimentary canal, leads to a variety of problems such as excessive bacterial activity, enhanced sleep quota, increased inertia levels in the body, and decreased cellular regeneration. All of this in turn manifests as a drop in one's sensitivity of perception. It is in this context that meat has been regarded as spiritually unsupportive, because spiritual process is essentially about enhancing one's perception beyond the limitations of the physical. Digestion drama. Another aspect of digestion is that to digest a certain kind of food, the human system produces alkalis, and to digest another kind of food, it generates acid. If you consume a jumble of foods, then stomach grows confused and produces both acids and alkalis, which neutralize each other and make digestive juices lose their edge. Hence the food remains in the stomach longer than required and weakens our ability to rejuvenate on the cellular level. It also causes what we refer to as tamas or inertia in the energy system, which over a period of time will alter the very quality of who you are and impair the quality of who you could be. Traditionally in southern India, people took care never to mix certain foods, but today food is no more about well-being of the body but a social affair. People eat out at buffets and the variety and number of dishes served is considered more important than nourishing the health and life of the body. The question is not about what not to eat, but about how much of what to eat. It is not a moral issue, it is a question of life sense. As you battle city life, you need an agile and working mind, and physical and mental balance, and some of you even have spiritual aspirations, even if it is only once in a while. So every individual must arrive at his or her own balance of diet, not by taking vows, but by observation and awareness. It is important not to turn into a food freak. Food should never become an all-consuming affair. Every creature on the planet knows what to eat and what not to. What is the human problem then? The human problem is not enough attention, but too much information. The yogic science works essentially with the interiority of the human being. Out of its profound understanding of the science of the human mechanism, this science later branched out into various systems. One such outcome was the system of Ayurveda, which is growing increasingly popular once again in modern times. The word Ayur means lifespan, and the word Veda means science or knowledge. So Ayurveda is the science of extending human lifespan. It is a system that uses external plant life and earth elements to promote health and to correct systemic irregularities. Knowledge systems like this were intended to assist those who are incapable of doing the necessary yogic practice to achieve the same ends. Sadhana. The consumption of a spoonful of clarified butter, ghee in India, on a daily basis a few minutes before a meal does wonders for your digestive system. If you consume clarified butter with sugar, as in sweets, it is digested and turns into fat. But clarified butter without sugar can cleanse, heal and lubricate the alimentary canal. Additionally, the cleansing of the colon will immediately manifest as a certain glow and aliveness in your skin. Even those who prefer not to consume dairy products could experiment with this because clarified butter passes through the system largely without getting digested. Evolutionary code. If you must eat non-vegetarian food, the best would be fish. Firstly, it is easily digestible with very high nutritional values. Secondly, it leaves the least amount of its imprint upon you. What is meant by this? Our bodies, all that we eat, excrete, and what eventually gets cremated or buried is just earth. The software within your system determines that if you eat a fruit, it is transformed into the human body and not into a monkey or a mouse. The efficiency of your system obliterates the other software that transformed soil into a fruit and arrives at a new software that will make a fruit into a human form. So more evolved creatures, particularly mammals, their software is more distinct and individualized. This makes it harder for your code-breaking system to erase the software of the creature that you consume and your mind is full of hierarchy. This process will settle the hierarchy. After some time, the word can fall away, but you instantly see the change as the number of truly conscious moments in your life increases. The air that you breathe, the food that you eat, the water that you drink, the land that you walk upon, and the very space that holds you, every one of them offers you a divine possibility. Enshrining the elements. In southern India, 5 major temples were built for each of the 5 elements. These temples were created not for worship, but to facilitate specific type of spiritual practice. To cleanse the water element, you would go to a particular temple and do one kind of practice. To cleanse the element of air, you would go to another. In this manner, 5 wonderful temples were created for each of the elements, infused with the kind of energy that assisted a particular type of spiritual practice. Traditionally, seekers traveled from one temple to another to be initiated into practices that enabled them to have mastery over the elements and to achieve healing, well-being and even transcendence. These 5 temples were built so that they functioned as one system. This was a phenomenal technology. Those who knew the appropriate spiritual practice could make use of it. Those who did not know the practice could benefit just by living in that region. The temples still exist. Even those who do not understand their energy significance marvel at these magnificent works of architecture. When shit hit the ceiling, once it happened, one day in the court, the Emperor Akbar asked, "What do you think gives the most pleasure to a person?" There was a chorus of responses. One courtier said, "Serving God is the greatest pleasure, Your Highness." There are always all manner of sycophants around emperors. So someone else said, "Oh my lord, serving you is the greatest pleasure I can conceive of." A third courtier said, "Just gazing at your face is the ultimate joy." The hyperbole poured forth. Birbal, the wise, just sat there bored. Akbar asked, "Birbal, what makes you so silent? What is it that gives you the greatest pleasure?" Birbal said, "Shitting." Until then, Akbar was feeling great with all the fawning and adoration. Now he got mad. He said, "For uttering such an obscenity in court, you had better prove it. If you cannot prove it, your life is at risk." Birbal said, "Give me a fortnight, Your Highness, I will prove it to you." Akbar said, "Fine." The next weekend, Birbal organized a hunting trip for Akbar into the forest and made sure all the women folk in the palace also travelled on this expedition. He set up the camp in such a way that Akbar's tent was in the center. All around he placed the families, women and children. He told the catering department to produce the best food. They produced the choicest delicacies and Akbar ate well. He was on a vacation after all. The next morning, when he got up and came out, he saw that there was no toilet tent. He went back into his tent and walked up and down, but the pressure was building up. He tried to go into the forest, but Birbal had made sure women folk were all over the place. The pressure built up by the minute. It was about 12 noon, and Akbar couldn't bear it anymore. He was just about to burst. Birbal, who was watching this whole scene, kept walking around muttering, "Toilet tent, where to put it, where to put it?" He was simply creating confusion and delaying the matters a little longer. The emperor was full of shit. What you call the body right now is just an accumulated heap of food. It is the product of nourishment you have ingested over the years. That is how it gets its name. The second layer is manomaya kosha, or the mental body. Today doctors are talking a great deal about psychosomatic ailments. This means that what happens in the mind affects what happens in the body. This is because what you call mind is not just the brain. It is not located in any single part of human anatomy. Instead, every cell has its own intelligence. So there is an entire mental body, an entire anatomy of the mind. Whatever happens in the mental body happens in the physical body, and in turn, whatever happens in the physical body happens in the mental body. Every fluctuation on the level of the mind has a chemical reaction, and every chemical reaction in turn generates a fluctuation on the level of the mind. The physical and mental bodies are like your hardware and software. Hardware and software cannot do anything unless you plug into quality power. So the third layer of the self is the pranamaya kosha, or the energy body. If you keep your energy body in perfect balance and exuberance, there will be no disease in your physical or mental bodies. Today, there is scientific evidence to show that the impact of genetic memory on the human being is not absolute. Except the fundamental aspects of the DNA, everything can be changed, including the genetic trends of susceptibility to ailments. Infectious diseases happen because of external organisms, but chronic diseases are manufactured daily by human beings. When your energy body is in full vibrancy and proper balance, chronic diseases cannot exist in the body. I could introduce you to thousands of people who have gotten rid of their physical and psychological ailments just by doing certain simple yogic practices. These practices are not aimed at the disease, they are just aimed at bringing a certain harmony and vitality into the energy body. These are the three dimensions of the self you're aware of right now: the physical, the mental, the energetic. They are essentially physical in nature. Though each is more subtle than the preceding one, it is like a light bulb, electricity and light. All these are physical. One you can hold in your hand, the other you can feel, the third takes a sensitive receptor, like the eye, to experience. But they are essentially physical, which is why you can experience them through your sense organs. However, there is a fourth layer called Vijnanamaya Kosha, or the etheric body. Jnana means knowledge, Vishesh Jnana means extraordinary knowledge, that which is beyond the sense perceptions. This is a transient state. It is neither physical nor non-physical. It is like a link between the two. It is not in your current level of experience, because your experience is limited to the five sense organs, which cannot perceive the non-physical. Those who report near-death experiences, or those who could have slipped accidentally into this state, such an experience occurs when, for some reason, people's physical, mental and energy bodies have become feeble. If you learn to find conscious access to this dimension, there will be a quantum leap in your ability to know the cosmic phenomenon. There is also a fifth sheath, the Anandamaya Kosha, which is beyond the physical entirely. Ananda means bliss. It has nothing to do with the physical realms of life. A dimension that is beyond physical cannot be described or even defined, so yoga talks about it only in terms of experience. When we are in touch with that aspect beyond the physical, we become blissful. It is not that a bubble of bliss lies within your physical structure. It is just that when you access this indefinable dimension, it produces an overwhelming experience of bliss. But bliss is not a goal in itself. Once you touch this dimension of non-existence, blissfulness is guaranteed. In this state, you are no more an issue in your own life. When you are no more an issue, you can fearlessly explore the beyond. Today, the Hatha Yoga that people are learning is not the classical form in its full depth and magnitude. The studio yoga that you see today is largely the physical aspect of the science. Just teaching the physical aspect of yoga is like having a stillborn baby. It is not only inefficient, it is a tragedy. If you want a live process, it needs to be transmitted in a manner that is inclusive of other dimensions of yoga. Hatha Yoga does not mean standing on your head or holding your breath. It is the way that it is done that makes all the difference. There was a time when I personally taught Hatha Yoga as a 2-day program. People would be overwhelmed with intensity of these programs, tears of ecstasy would flow simply with the practice of asanas. Why doesn't this happen more often? Simply because Hatha Yoga is being imparted as an end unto itself, rather than as a preparatory system. Consequently, while the Hatha Yoga in the world today brings peace for a few, health for others, it is unfortunately a painful circus for many. This may be fine for someone whose aspiration is only peace and health. But you're looking at yoga as a means of transforming yourself into a receptive possibility beyond five senses. The Hatha Yoga needs to be approached in its classical form. Sadhana. Look around. Among your family, co-workers and friends, can you see how everyone has different levels of perception? Just observe this closely. If you know a few people who seem to have a greater clarity of perception than others, watch how they conduct their body. They often have a certain poise without practice, but just a little practice can make an enormous difference. If you sit for a few hours a day with your spine erect, you will see that it will have an unmistakable effect on your life. You will now begin to understand what I mean by geometry of your existence. Just the way you hold your body determines almost everything about you. Another way of listening to life is paying attention to it experientially, not intellectually or emotionally. Choose any one thing about yourself, your breath, your heartbeat, your pulse, your little finger, just pay attention to it for 11 minutes at a time. Do this at least 3 times a day. Keep your attention on any sensation, but feel free to continue doing whatever you're doing. If you lose attention, it doesn't matter, simply refocus your attention. This practice will allow you to move from mental alertness to awareness. You will find the quality of your life experience will begin to change. Downloading the cosmos. Until recently, after every storm, you had to go up to your roof and adjust your TV antenna. Only if it was aligned in a certain way did the world pour into your living room. Or else, as you were watching your favorite soap opera or football match, a blizzard would suddenly appear on your screen. The body is like that antenna. If you hold it the right way, it becomes receptive to all there is in the existence. If you hold it another way, you will remain absolutely ignorant of everything beyond the 5 senses. Here is another analogy. Your body is like a barometer. If you know how to read it, it can tell you everything about you and the world around you. Body never lies. So in yoga, we learn to trust the body. We transform the physical body from a series of compulsions of flesh, blood and hormones into your conscious process, a powerful instrument of perception and knowing. If you know how to read the body, you can tell your potential, your limitations, even your past, present and future. That is why the fundamental yoga starts with the physical body.